Welcome to Escaping the Grind, everyone. This is the show where we sit down with people who've found creative and unconventional ways to build a life on their own terms. Whether you've achieved or are working towards financial independence, are leveraging geo arbitrage, or simply switching careers to improve your life satisfaction, we want to document your journey. I'm your host, Sully, and I'm here to explore real people breaking free from the 9 to 5, redesigning their lives and pursuing new life projects. Today, my guest is someone who's taken a completely different path via geo arbitrage and financial independence. We're going to unpack his story, turning points, strategies, and mindset shifts. But before jumping in, I want to clarify the broad interpretation of escaping the grind, which basically strives to achieve genuine freedom and ultimate control over your life. This goal can manifest through various paths. It could be pursuing financial independence, moving abroad, or even starting a new business. I myself recently escaped my grind of a high responsibility, high stress career, long dark Canadian winters, and a seemingly endless affordability crisis in Canada in April of this year. I'm now exploring a nomadic lifestyle, and I'm currently in Medellin, Colombia. And so with no further ado, let's jump in. I want to welcome to the pod, Justin G. Full disclosure, Justin and I met at, I think it was Choosify's first meetup here in Medellin, Colombia, which was really cool. And when I met Justin, I was really pleased and interested to hear his story and thought he'd be an excellent guest for the first podcast. So let's turn it over to you, Justin. Welcome to the pod. Why don't you kick us off with your backstory and a little bit about where you are now and how you got here?
Hey there, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to the podcast, Patrick. Appreciate it. As Patrick mentioned, we had just met up recently over here in Medellin. I live just outside of the city over in Rio Negro. It's about 20 minutes from the airport over here. I'm 35 years old, just turned last month, father of two, and a husband, very, very happy husband. And it's been quite a journey taking me to this point in life and in this place in the world, right? So I was originally born in New Orleans, Louisiana. I moved when I was about a year and a half over to Alaska. Moved around quite a few places in general, just due to my father being in the Coast Guard. And then ended up growing up most of my young adult life on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, with also short periods of time with my father over in Florida. So I originally went to school for electronics engineering, worked in that field for a little while, and I'll talk about that more later, but I needed a change. I think that's something that a lot of people can connect with, is that they're always looking for some sort of change, right? We can be content with what we have, right? But there's always something more that we're striving for, right?
That's really interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to learn that you've moved around a lot in your youth. I also did. I think I was born in South America and lived in 5-6 countries before we moved back to Canada. So maybe there's something there as well, a bit of a wanderlust. Okay, cool. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your grind? So what was your grind that you just mentioned you needed to change? What was the grind you started to identify?
So I would say, right after I got out of school, I basically got straight into I basically was working at CVS before I went to school, right? So making $9 an hour and stuff like that. And then right after I got out of college, I was able to get a position making 3 times more than what I was, but also probably 10x more responsibility. So, it seemed all fun and games in the beginning. It was like I was living an awesome life. Obviously, at my age, I was making good money. I got a company vehicle. I was able to travel around the Northeast and, do some awesome work in the medical industry over there. But there was something that I was definitely lacking. I mean, I was working all the time, but I didn't really feel like I was getting ahead outside of anything other than work, right? So, there was a lot of commutes. I was staying in hotels pretty much all week long. And it was just very, very draining, honestly. And, it got to the point where I was getting so stressed that I never had any history of anxiety or panic attacks or anything like that. And one day when I was working on one of the medical instruments in one of the hospitals, I started having that feeling of, my heart racing, beating in my chest, my back of my neck tightening, thinking like, okay, what the heck is going on here? So that was the first occurrence. It was only about 5 minutes. And then over the few months after, it started getting worse. It started, lasting for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then I actually started to realize that, my goodness, I developed a history of panic attacks all of a sudden due to, just trying to work myself into the ground. So, and then I would say my first breaking point, which was with this position, was when I was in training in Florida. And, I had that feeling coming on that I was basically already used to for 6 months before that. But this time it just wasn't going away. So I ended up having a panic attack for like probably an hour straight, which at that point feels like an eternity. Ended up having to go to the ER because they weren't really sure. I did have a lot of palpitations. They weren't sure if I was actually having some sort of heart issue. So laying there alone, without any of my family nearby in this ER in Florida, was definitely actually, I haven't recalled this in a long time. And it's actually quite emotional. And just, feeling that was just like, I need a change. There's always these moments in life where sometimes we're always given signals, right? I'm sure you can relate, Patrick, that we need to make a change. And sometimes we just kind of put it off in the background, like, oh no, I'm just being, ignorant with things and then it usually gets this moment where we are basically screamed at that we need to make a change. And I was the first one. Was like, no, I can't do this anymore. So that's why I initially first quit that job. And I was like, I need a change with this life. Then I ended up going to another one where I was still commuting a lot. I was still commuting close to 6 hours a day because I was living in Maine at the time, but I was still working near the Boston area in Massachusetts. So with that, again, it was all fun and games in the beginning. I was making even more money, but at least I had a little bit less travel than how I was commuting with the other position. I got my panic attacks under control until the point of I was there for about a year and a half. And then it was a point of having a layoff within the company. This was a company from Qualcomm. And I was in this dormant period where I wasn't sure what to do next. So, I was applying for jobs like what we always do generally, right? After we lose a job, oh, I got to pay my bills. I got to do this. I got to maintain this lifestyle. And this second moment was, I would think I was in like the third and final step of an interview for this biotech company in Boston. And I was going to drive there. I was about halfway there. And it doesn't matter what you believe in, right? It could be God, it could be the universe. Like you just download something from somewhere that tells you like, no. And I was driving there and all of a sudden I just got this feeling. It's like, this isn't, what are you going to do? You're going to be doing the same exact thing that you've been doing. You're not making a change, right? And there's a lot of people that say, right, if you've lived this way for the past 5 years and you're not going to make a change, like the next five are going to be exactly the same. So that was one of those kind of realizations that was like, okay, no, like this isn't going to work for you. So I just completely took the next exit, turned around, bailed from the interview, which some people may say is irresponsible. Like, oh, we have responsibilities and stuff like that. But, when your soul is telling you that you need to do something different, and yeah, after that point, we can continue. But after that point is when I finally decided, I need to end this type of grind, this type of lifestyle, because it just is not serving me whatsoever.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's quite the quite the signals your body was sending you. Triggered me a little bit. I had a similar, semi panic attack, or just where my heart just started to race, and all
Mhm.
the symptoms you described happened in the last year of work. It was just really stressful. And I remember after that little episode, I said to myself, something's got to change. Earlier too, in the senior leadership role I had, I actually, during the pandemic, was so stressed, and I was working, from very early to very late, because it was just crisis after crisis, and I was new in my role. So I was trying to, perform really well and working extra. And I worked so much, and it was so sedentary that I really messed up my back, like really messed it up. Like I
Nice.
needed physio for a whole year, needling, the whole 9 yards. And that was another one of those signals from your body saying something's got to change. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think most of us professionals, as we scale up in the professional world, and as responsibility increases, our bodies start to signal to us. I want to pick up on something you wrote in a blog post, and we can link to it in show notes. And you wrote a blog post about kind of all of this, but a lot of it was to do with debt and kind of societal norms. And I'll just read it off, and I kind of want to get your take on it. So you said,
Sure.
social media makes you feel like you're failing if you don't own a home by 30, don't have a six-figure portfolio, don't drive a car, and you're not living in some curated life. I kind of feel like this is part of the fuel of keeping you in the grind, right? So if all the societal norms are saying you have to have all these things, well, how are you going to have them if you're not working this crazy lifestyle, and climbing that corporate ladder, and giving up all these other dimensions of a good life, just so you can, flash around in social media, and kind of achieve what everyone's expecting you to achieve. So that's the way I interpret this, is wow, that's fueling us staying in these precarious situations. But what's your take on it? How did it impact your life and your grind?
Well, I would say it's even more, not per se for me, but even more apparent in everybody's daily lives now. Because I mean, I would say even 10 years ago, or whatever, there was social media, and people were still trying to impress others that they don't know. But now it's a whole other level. Like I don't even know what I will do for my sons to train their minds to not look at this stuff and compare themselves to make them feel bad. So yeah, when I first started with my first position right after college, right, I mentioned I started making a lot of money, which what I was not what I was used to, right? So um, I automatically went into the fact of like, oh well, I do this, so now I need to upgrade my lifestyle, and something we'll probably touch on later is lifestyle inflation, right? Um, so and I think it's just natural us for us humans to compare ourselves to everybody else. Contentment is a very difficult thing to understand and to grasp. Um, and especially with, marketing tactics and everything like that, which is most of social media with sponsored ads and them knowing exactly what your likes and interests are, um, it's even harder to kind of stay out of that, right? So what I forget what the quote is like we buy things with money that we don't have to impress people that we don't even care about, right? And that
Hmm.
kind of relates to also, I don't, have you read The Art of Spending Money by Morgan Housel, the one that just came out?
I haven't, but I've heard him speak about it.
It's good. It's good. Yeah. I mean, and he mentioned in that book about like also that same fact of we do all these things and we try and show off all these things, and a majority of the people that see them are complete strangers that we don't honestly care about or we're never going to have any interaction with. Where the fact is like the people that mean the most to you, your family, your friends and stuff like that, like they don't care. They really don't care what you have, and at the end of the day, they're going to be there for you and they love you for who you are, not because of the things you have. And obviously if that's the case, then well, they're not your real friends either. So um but yeah, I think this whole comparison bias, is a difficult thing to grasp, because if we continue to try and oh, well, they have this, they're doing these awesome vacations, they're doing all this stuff, and like as I mentioned in this post, like nobody's posting their breakdowns, nobody's posting their repossessions that happened to me, and all these things, right? They're just posting the beautiful filtered moments that the reason that they're doing that is basically they're trying to one up somebody else. And they're probably doing it from their own pain of seeing somebody else doing it. So it's like it's a vicious circle, right?
Yeah.
So
And you don't see them putting up with a toxic work environment because they need to pay for all these things that they are showing off either, right?
well, that was
There's
gonna be
that
my
angle as well.
yeah, like these things that we're paying for to impress people that we don't even care about. Like what is it? Vicky, Your Money or Your Life. Vicky, what's her name?
Robbins, is it?
Vicky Robbins. Yeah. So, everything has a cost. So if we are trying to get all these things to impress all these people, that is going to extend our time to reach FI, or we're going to have longer hours to actually be able to pay for these things, right? Everything has an inherent cost, whether you see it or not, right? So if you want the latest iPhone, I actually had this recently. Like we were just in the US again. I was thinking about, should I get a 17 Pro? I have a 14 Pro, but 17 Pro looks kind of cool because I like taking photos. Like, but the photos in the 14 Pro are perfectly fine. So it's like, should I dump between me and my wife, over $2,000 on these new phones just to, especially be back here in Colombia and oh wow, these guys have the newest ones. Like, they must be rich. And but at the end of the day, those are, because I'm still technically in the workforce right now, right? So those are working hours that will take away time from my wife and my sons and my own independence, right? Uh, in order to pay for these things. And if you really look at taking life away by working a regular job just to show off these things, you have a different angle, and you kind of make better decisions as to why you're doing these things.
Yeah. And it sounds like part of your working through the grind and having these realizations, including the debt, kind of led you to realizing what you just said. And it's a perfect segue to, okay, now you're moving into escape mode, escaping the grind. So what was that plan and strategy? How did you vision it or construct it? Yeah, tell
Uh-huh.
us more about that.
So I would say the escape plan. I wouldn't say there was totally a plan. Um, Everything just kind of went naturally, I guess, as you should probably follow with most things in life, right? We can have goals and stuff like that, but if we're too stuck to their goals and expectations, then it's there's my son in the background. If you don't hear that, that's one of the parts of having a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old. Even when you lock
Yeah,
the door,
all
you're
good.
never really alone. So, um, so so yeah. So I would say right after I had right after that moment that I was telling you about, when I turned around, I said this wasn't a life for me. So right after that, when I decided that I wasn't going to continue with that, I ended up going to Florida to visit my father. I was hanging out there for about 2 weeks. And while I was there, my cousin, which was living in Seattle, Washington at the time, messaged me. And he's like, hey, I took some time off. I was supposed to do something else, but I wanted to take this trip somewhere to Latin America. Um, but I don't have anybody going with me. Do you want to go? It's like, all right, where are we going? Like, Ecuador. Okay. Why'd you pick that? I don't know. I just pointed on the map. So that was his way of saying that we wanted to travel. Um, so I ended up 2 weeks after that being in Ecuador, out of all places. I'd never been to Latin America. Neither did I have intentions of doing so. But it's one of those funny things with life. You just kind of, as I'll say later, you just kind of follow the thread, right, to see what comes to you, and you just kind of figure it out, right? There's always going to be fear. There's always going to be uncertainty with anything like this, right? I mean, I didn't speak any Spanish, you know, other than maybe 4 or 5 words. And I knew nothing about the culture, but it was just like, I don't want to continue with this life that I was living. So why not try something else? It may not work. I may end up coming back and say that was a terrible idea. But, I ended up being there for what, 2 weeks, and I left and I went back 3 weeks later and moved there permanently and lived there for 3 years. So that was pre-Colombia. But I guess you would say it's still part of the escape plan, although it wasn't entirely planned. Um, I don't know if you had anything to
Yeah,
comment
no,
on. Yeah.
that's super interesting and organic in some ways. And so you went right back. Was just you enjoyed it so much you wanted to spend more time there? Did you think about finding a way to financially make it viable while you were there, or how did you think that through?
So in the beginning, this is obviously why savings are a very good thing, when we talk about the financial part of it. So in the beginning, I had saved up, I don't know, maybe 15K or something like that, between the package I got from leaving the company and just, savings that I had. And I was able to live there for about the first year and a half, just on those savings, right? So that gave me freedom that I had never had before. And it was kind of like the first taste of it, right? So, and I was able to, finally experience the culture, start to learn Spanish at my own pace, and really kind of get into the culture. But so after that, when the money was starting to run out, because it always does unless you figure out another way, I ended up applying for a software company for a software that I actually used to use personally. And before this point, I had never done any remote work, right? So I had used to commuting, going to the office and stuff like that. So I finally was able to get a position remotely. So yeah, so I ended up starting to work remotely, and yeah, there's a lot of caveats that come with that. Obviously, there's wonderful time freedom to be able to go wherever you want, but sometimes you have to set your own limits too, which I still to this day, many years later, have issues doing. Um, so I was there in Ecuador, started working remotely, and then I ended up. I actually had a first marriage. Um, I was married to somebody from Quito in Ecuador. And after those 3 years, things were very rocky. Um, and I'll actually transition to this. I think this is a good point to kind of transition to this part too, is like at that point of the rockiness, I had decided, I had learned about a couple years before about the Camino de Santiago. So these are weird little things, right? That life's kind of nudges into little ideas little seeds, right? That you should listen to. Um, and that kind of came to me at the right point because I didn't really know what to do at that point with the marriage. So I ended up going in 2019, to Spain, originally to France, to start on the Camino de Santiago. If anybody listening, if you've never done it or haven't heard about it, please look into it, especially if you're in a changing point of your life. And that definitely gave me the space and the time that I needed to kind of look at my life from at an explosive view, right? And see what wasn't working out for me at that point, right? There's so many stages of life. You can't just have one solution for every stage, right? Mm-hmm. So when I ended up getting back from walking the Camino, I had a lot of space, right? And I decided that marriage was not working out for either of us at that point. So then I had a transition which brought me to Colombia, where I ended up like, I didn't know what to do next at that point. I was like, okay, I just got back from walking, 700K. And I've got no place to stay. So I was staying with my cousin for a couple of weeks, still in Ecuador. But then I was like, okay, I don't really want to go back to the grind in the US because of how much distaste that I had previously before I made this transition to live in Latin America. So I was like, okay, where's a place that I think would be cool? I was a cyclist. I loved going up mountains and stuff like that. So I was like, where's a place where there's a good cycling community? And just, it's close by. And I ended up buying a ticket to Colombia. And at that point, I was literally starting fresh again with a backpack full of clothes, and that's it. And that was another, I guess you would say, another bump in the road, but probably another one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, right? Because these are the things that, in hindsight, they like, why the hell is this happening? Like, I'm having to restart things over and over again, but we only get more resilient, and there's only better things that come to us, honestly, after all of these restarts. I don't know if you have any experiences like that. I'm sure you have plenty, but any drastic experiences like that, Patrick, by any chance? Or?
Well, no divorces yet, which is good because
That's good.
happily married.
Leave it. Leave it to that.
But yeah, I mean, I remember when I finished high school, I was one of those terrible students who didn't do well, had no future career aspirations. I was just lost, and I ended up working in the hospitality sector just as a catch-all, and quickly learned that wasn't the greatest place for me. And once and I also graduated into the great financial crisis, similar to what a lot of youth are experiencing now with a really weak labor market. And I ended up going to South Korea to teach ESL. And that was one of those moments, right? Because all of a sudden, foreign country, just figuring it all out and reflecting on what I wanted to do. And once I finished that year, I came back, did a master's, and that kicked off my career. So yeah, I think we all have those kind of reflective transition periods, and that sounds like a pretty intense one. And so you transitioned, did the Camino, came back, moved to Colombia. I think you went to Bucaramanga, right? Is that where you arrived, or did you arrive somewhere else first?
Um, I was I was going around in Medellin, Bogota, and Bucaramanga. Um, and yeah, Bucaramanga is where I ended up when that thing called the pandemic hit.
Yeah, interesting. So you were
Yeah.
locked in place.
Yeah, right in the center of Bucaramanga with, at that point again, not knowing anybody and just kind of locked into an apartment and, you know, the first couple weeks, everybody, clapping on their balconies at 8 p.m. because uh, for the paramedics and the doctors and everybody, kind of a gratitude thing, everybody doing their thing. But that only lasted about 2 weeks. Then we were in lockdown for many, many more months. So, but yeah.
Cool. Okay, and so you're in Bucaramanga. You're kind of working through all this. Is this when you got this new job? You were working remote still in this role, and kind of thinking about whether or not Colombia was your new spot to settle, or what was going through your mind?
So I was actually, this is still the position I was in. I ended up being with them for 7 years. So I was still with them working remotely, even while I was walking the Camino. I don't know how the heck I did that,
Hmm.
but, and yeah, when I ended up in Bucaramanga, as you mentioned, well, you could see in my post over there, that Patrick will link, that, there's a lot of alone time. Sometimes that could be destructive based upon, our mind remediating, going through different things and, kind of hurting itself, or using as a time to be constructive, to be able to meditate, to be able to really reflect on things. Um, so at that point, yeah, I was working remotely with the same company. I was I was doing all right. Obviously living in Colombia with the exchange rate and stuff like that, the money was going a long way nonetheless. Um, but I didn't have any sort of strategy for my future at all. I mean, or even if I lost that job, like I had no idea what I was going to do again. So that's when I really started going into learning about investing. And, started originally listening to the Choose Five podcast, which is obviously how we met. Thank goodness for that group. And read The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And also, is it the Quit Like a Millionaire, I believe it was, which reinforced geo arbitrage. So I really didn't know I was doing it until they had actually mentioned it in the book. So yeah, I was spending that much probably back in the day when I lived in the US, before COVID, but that was me. I mean, that wasn't a family of four, right? So, I'd say we live pretty good here. There are certain things which I'll transition to, where just because you live in a low cost of living country or a cheaper country doesn't mean there aren't extra incurred costs, right? I'll just be honest with my own, personal experience. It still ends up being way cheaper, nonetheless. I'll leave it at that. But for example, I'm sure Patrick, like electronics, I would never buy one here because it costs substantially more expensive. Or let's see what else. What else is something that's super expensive here that you would say that you don't purchase, that you wait to go to the US or Canada to purchase?
Yeah, I think it's anything that's made outside of the country, to be honest, because there's high import duties and there's a very high VTA, right? So the
Yeah.
VTA in Colombia is 19 point something percent. Where I live in Canada, it's 5%. So just off the bat, it's 15% differential just on VTA. The interesting thing I noticed in North America is things that are manufactured in Asia or in cheap manufacturing destinations are very affordable and accessible in North America, and
Hmm.
you just replace them when they're done, because that's the cheapest way. The fixing them is prohibitively expensive,
Hmm.
and then things like healthy food are the opposite. They're more expensive in North America because they're just not produced there. And so it kind of flips
Yep.
when you come to Colombia. I eat avocados the size of my head every day with every meal. Uh,
And then like 50 cents.
exactly. And so you're kind of you're going to a parallel universe in terms of how things are valued. And so we just furnished an apartment here, and I was shocked to see how much things cost relative to back home in Canada, and and not only the cost but also the quality of what you're
Yeah.
getting. So that's a challenge. Anything that's manufactured abroad is just going to be at a huge premium, and so you have to be strategic, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's funny you talk about the used to being, a throwaway lifestyle. I used to be that way too before I moved down south. Like if I would wear a pair of shoes until they got so dirty that I would just throw them away and buy some new ones. Whereas here is like I will go, I call it the Latin sink, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I will scrub those darn things until they get so white. And you just, yeah, it's a repair culture here.
Yeah.
Like there's still value in it, so why not repair it? Yeah, you see people repairing TV sets, fans, when you could buy a new fan for $60. Like, but I think just mainly due to the labor cost too. I think the labor cost is one of the things that is significantly cheaper. You might be able to get the materials in the US for cheaper, but the labor is going to be 3 times more for somebody to actually do it for you. So yeah, it's kind of there's pros and cons of each, right? One thing that I've had recently, and maybe something a lot of people don't talk about, are visa costs. Like
Mm.
I have, I've been here almost been over 5 years, so I will finally, after this year, be able to get my residency visa. Up until this point, I have been a migrant. Um, each of those times that I've had to renew my migrant visa, between government fees and just service fees for utilizing a visa service to do the process for you, it's been like $500 a pop. And it's like I've done that almost on a yearly basis. And it's like, what? That's not something that you would expect. But again, at the end of the day, it's worth going through the trouble because you're saving way much more than that on a day-to-day life. So
Yeah, it nets out in your favor, of course. We're talking about
yeah,
hidden costs, right? Because the assumption is that everything is lower, and it's not. The other thing,
yeah,
and you've kind of alluded to with the visa, but I would expand this out to anything administrative or legal here. It's so convoluted, it's so bureaucratic that you need to hire someone to do it. Whether it's your
yeah, that
taxes,
knows it. Yeah.
it's like this intermediary service economy that you have to engage in because it's so difficult to deal with the bureaucracy. So, in Canada, we use a simple tax software. You can bang out your taxes in half an hour. Super easy. Here, you must hire an accountant to do them, or else you're asking for trouble. And that just expands across all sorts of service sectors, and so another hidden cost. But I agree with you. Net,
100%.
you come out ahead. But I often think of that bureaucratic headache as just the cost of entry. It's the cost of living in this beautiful country and enjoying these things that we don't have access to back home, right?
I was going to say that. I was going to touch on that. I mean, we're just talking about financial costs at this point, right? But, you know, there are so many other things, even if you were still net win on the financial part of it, right? There are so many other things that we're able to enjoy, especially this part of the country, where, you know, we're in a little bit of a rainy season right now. Obviously, that happens every year, but I mean, it doesn't get that cold here. Like, we're able to go outside pretty much every day of the year. Um, like as you mentioned with food, like you're actually able to eat whole, like nutritive food, which at the end of the day, health is one of your biggest assets. And if you're able to do that cheaply and eat well and eat less processed stuff, like that is way better. The warmth of the people, like I have one long-term friend in the United States still, one, and it's a guy I used to work with. Majority of the people I met here were at the apartment complex we used to live at before we moved where we are now. Plus the neighbors that are over here. It's like, you know, if you're not already living here, um, you just, people just want to be your friend. I don't know. Like, you know, I see that personality in you, Patrick. Like you are Colombian. So, I can, you know, they're just so, I guess, alegre, just so happy and upbeat, and it doesn't really matter what a lot of them have in their pockets. Like people are just genuinely nice, not looking what they want to get out of you, right? And I think that's definitely one of the biggest benefits that I've seen living here is I've just had so many genuine friendships that I've been able to make. And, you know, as you'll see in many different things that they talk about documentaries, like that's one of the benefits of longevity, or one of the keys to longevity is having a good community. I feel like that's definitely something we are now constructing here, hopefully with, you know, people with like-minded financial mindsets as well. So
Indeed. And that's a really good segue to kind of health and well-being. What have you noticed from a health and well-being? You just mentioned kind of community and relationships, but is there anything you've noticed from a health perspective that has changed because you've, escaped that old grind and you might have a new grind, but how does that fit into, living a healthy, fulfilling life?
um, knock on wood, I haven't had a panic attack since that day I was in the hospital. So that's obviously a big thing because stress is, you know, a faster killer than cigarettes or alcohol or anything like that. Living in consistently high cortisol levels is not a good thing. Um, so I would say, yeah, definitely way less stressed. Um, as we mentioned, diet wise, I'm able to eat a lot better. I used to, you know, always choose the fast route of eating back when I lived in the States. And that would just, it would show outside of me too. Like I used to have terrible acne too because of all the stuff, all the fatty stuff, and not good fats, bad fats, saturated stuff that would express itself right in my skin. Um, and and yeah, just the community that you live in. Like for example, I never liked the gym. I mean, I was always a cyclist per se, but again, where it kind of comes with the community, like my wife got me into this CrossFit gym about like 6 months ago, and I'm having a blast. Like I never thought I would enjoy it, um, but it's amazing. Like having these like-minded people that push you, that understand you, um, and they're just friendly. You know, they're just not just trying to collect your monthly payment just to, you know, um I don't know, that part. Yeah, I've been in better physical shape than I ever was when I was going through those moments, right? When I was working, commuting all the time. So there's been a lot of compounding benefits on different factors for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, since I stopped my high responsibility role in Canada in April, I've noticed. Well, I've lost 12 pounds first and foremost. So my
Congrats.
waistline has definitely improved. Part of it
That's
is,
awesome.
I'm not sedentary anymore. I'm not sitting in committee meetings all day.
Mm.
I'm out and about. I'll walk to the the local fruit store, or down to the coffee shop, and so I'm active. I also go to the gym quite a bit, and I have the energy to go to the gym. I used to really struggle trying to go to the gym in my old professional career because I had given it everything. The tank the tank was literally empty. So I'm more likely to go and do exercise every day. And I was telling someone, in Canada, for most of the year, most of your produce is shipped in. It's traveled weeks to get there, and you can tell the quality. Here, I'm
Yeah.
eating really fresh fruit and veg, and really healthy foods, and my body feels like it's eating premium gasoline versus the regular,
It's a good way to put
right? And
it.
you just feel great, and you have more energy. The other interesting thing is, I have a Fitbit and I track my sleeping. I My average sleep is now over 7 hours. It used to not. It
Nice.
used to be. Used to hover, give or take around 6 hours, because I was having trouble sleeping because of a stressful job, or I was waking up in the middle of the night, and so my sleep has also really, really improved, and that sets the tone for the rest of your day. So I'm noticing significant health gains, and then when you couple that with just this really open community of Colombians, it's been really positive on my end.
It's
We're
great, man.
It is. It's a great escape, right? So we're
Yeah.
coming up to the end of the pod. We'll wrap up with two kind of actionable questions. There's lots of people in the grind in North America and elsewhere, grinding it out. They might take some
Yes.
interesting ideas from this pod or elsewhere, but why don't you share, an actionable step that someone in the audience can take today to start to work towards an escape strategy, whether it's escaping their grind or debt, or trying to get out of this social media expectation vortex that you mentioned. What are a couple actionable steps someone can take?
I guess, well, there's multiple facets to each of those things, right? So, first, well, for somebody that wants to escape the grind and try something different, like the only way to do it is just get in it, right? I mean, you have to follow the thread and just kind of see where life takes you and not be so afraid of taking these risks, right? For example, this is our first podcast. I have never, ever, ever done this in my entire life. So, and I don't think you have either, Patrick. So we're just trying to figure it out, but it could be something that works out that, you or I enjoy doing, right? So yeah, if you want to get out of the grind and try to experience some different sort of lifestyle, like first of all, if you want to live in a different area, try going somewhere else, but not as a vacationer, right? It's different when you're on vacation one place and you're spending in all these nice restaurants and staying in all these nice places, and then you have to get back to reality. No, like go there like as a normal person, go to the coffee shops, interact with people, local people, see what they're doing, um, and just try it out, see how you feel, right? um, Regarding social media, delete it on your phone. Only have one source of access. um, if you're going to review it, if you still need to do it to communicate with people, keep it on the computer, or turn off notifications completely. Like, I sometimes have Instagram still on my phone. Occasionally, if somebody wants to show me something that I needed to see, just because there are a lot of, financial independence people on there. But don't get pinged for everything. Somebody liked your photo. Somebody did this. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to share you don't need to share things to toot your own horn at the end of the day, right? If you can do it to hopefully, be an influence and not be an influence, not an influencer, right? To be able to, do something like this to, give somebody a different perspective, then whatever, keep it on your phone, but turn off the notifications because, that constant stimulation is not helping you whatsoever. And financially, I would say just pick up one of the books I had mentioned, right? Quit Like a Millionaire, The Simple Path to Wealth, or, check out the Choose 5 podcasts. Like, there are so many hidden tidbits in there that, you can take that will really kind of get your mind at least starting to transition in the right direction. It's not going to happen instantly. Like, this is a process like anything. Like, there's no, oh, you can take these 5 steps and you're automatically be financially independent or you're automatically going to feel fulfilled. Like, there's no cookie cutter way of doing this. It's all about, listening to yourself, following your instincts, and just kind of experimenting with things. Because what worked for me, what worked for Patrick may not work for you. Like, but if you do want any advice or anything like that, though at least a little bit that we may be able to give you, like, you can reach out to us. We're normal people, and we love to help in any way that we can. So
Well said. And if you want to join the pod, please reach out as well. I think we'll leave it here. This has been super interesting. Great insights from Justin. Thank you, Justin, for sharing your journey. And let's hear it in the
pleasure.
comments. What's your grind and what is your plan to escape? See you all in the next pod.
Thanks,
Thank you.
thanks so much, all. Bye.